that all of the squares are now joined. I have to be careful. I have a candle in here now, so I can't be too crazy with my sharing, but hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Nitty Natty. Welcome to episode 259 of the Love and Stitches podcast. I have lots of energy today for this podcast. I have been doing some cleaning this week, organizing my yarn, which means I've been thinking about project plans for the upcoming month. Right now we're in the last week of January, and February 1st is on a Saturday, which is coming up in just a few days. So my wheels are already spinning for how I want to finish out this month, and then also what I have planned for next month. So since I am down to only 2 major projects right now, I am going to talk a lot about my project plans in this video. I also seem to have received a lot of Yarny mail this week, which does kind of fold into what I'm planning for February, so that's all going to be in here too. Before we get into things, I want to say a big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's episode. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it super easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from content to digital products to time, all in one place and all on your own terms. I'll share more about Squarespace later on in the episode. For now, let's get into the projects. I want to start this week with my Yorkshire blanket. This is the Yorkshire Crochet Along blanket by Mima Makes. I am at a turning point in this project. I am so close to finishing it, and I can't wait to share with you what I've been doing this past week. But first, I want to talk about the granny square blocking board that I shared on the last episode. I no longer have it with me because I was borrowing it from a friend, and I have since returned it because I'm all done blocking my squares. But it is basically like a big pegboard that you have these metal rods that you place in, and then you tension your granny squares on them. It was my understanding that you could put multiple granny squares, like stack them on top of each other, of course, kind of spread them out. And so that's what I tried to do. And I asked for some tips last week, and you guys shared a lot of great ones. So again, this is on the last episode, 258. So if you want to see what that looks like and you missed that episode, you can go there. You can just like Google granny square blocking board and it will come up. So these are the tips that you guys gave me last week, and they were very, very helpful. So I appreciate you so much because I just felt like I was missing something. My squares were all like squished together. They still dried pretty fast. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't the worst thing, but I expected a little bit more out of it. So the number one tip that I got from you was from several people was to use beads or pony beads to space out the square. So put a square on and then put pony beads on all the pegs and then put another square on. And I just thought that was the cleverest tip. I don't have any pony beads and I also don't own a board. So if I do end up getting one in the future, I'm totally going to get a pack of beads because I think that would work perfectly. Beads are a great material to use in between because they're plastic, they're not going to absorb any water, they're also not going to like make it harder for the squares to dry, and they're very sturdy. So I think that would be a great solution. The other tips that people gave me, I saw a lot of people say that they actually don't wet block or wash their squares before using the blocking board. Some people said that they dry block, which this is something I've never heard of before, dry blocking. I didn't really get to check if this was right, but my interpretation is that you don't do anything to your square and you just like throw it on there and just use tension alone to try to block it. I don't know how effective this would be personally because I know at some point I'm going to wash this blanket, so I kind of want to get those squares to the closest to their finished state as possible. So for me, wet blocking I think is the best solution, but it was interesting to see that people don't actually use it that way. I just had never even thought of that. So that was a cool point to bring up. A lot of other people said that they kind of do something in between. So instead of completely submerging their squares in water or like with soap and washing them as I did, they would just put the granny square on the blocking board and mist it. So they would not get it fully wet, but they would get it a little bit damp, and that would kind of help to relax it. Or they would steam block on the board. So those are two options too. Again, probably not something I'm gonna do. One, I don't have a steamer. Two, I really do like fully submerging the whatever I'm doing in water because I want to wash it. I want it to get it to as close to its final state as possible. But I think that would be a really good solution if you were just trying to kind of get everything mostly even just to assemble. And then, oh, there's something else I wanted to share. Let me see if I put it in my notes. Yes, okay, the one other thing is that so many of you were saying that what I might be missing from the pegs and why my squares might be sliding down is that I didn't get enough tension on them. So a lot of you said when you are blocking your squares, you're getting quite a bit of tension on those like corners, and that way the squares aren't falling down on top of each other. So I think that's probably one of the main things I was missing from mine. But the reason I didn't have a ton of tension on mine is I was aiming for a certain size. Like there was already a predetermined size that I wanted each of the squares to be. For some of these designs, it meant that there was more tension. For some, it meant that there was almost no tension at all, like the square was already that size without any blocking. So I totally think that was part of the issue, I guess, for me, is that I didn't really have tension on the squares. I guess I could have made the squares a little bit bigger, like if they were supposed to be 7 by 7 and a lot of them were pretty close to that. Again, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller, or sometimes right at 7 inches. But I could have just made them a little bigger, and I really didn't think about that. But I'd also already done half of the blanket, like I'd already blocked half the blanket to 7 inches, 7-inch squares. So at that point, I really didn't feel like I could change it. But all in all, I feel like I know a lot more for next time if I were to use the blocking board. And I'm not planning to get a blocking board for myself, but if I do have another granny square project before I leave Tennessee, I'm totally gonna borrow it from my friend again because it was really handy and a lot quicker than getting out like all my pins and all my blocking mats and all of those things. So take with that what you will. The blocking board that I was using is from Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and just like search for blocking board, you'll probably find a similar one. Okay, let's talk about the blanket. So I was working on my third of 4 rows of 6 squares this week for the Yorkshire Blanket. And I was really happy to be able to complete 1 square per day. That was my goal, 1 square per day in a week. That gives me 1 extra day because there's 6 squares. But since I was doing so good on my 1 square a day this weekend, so I guess Saturday was my 6th day and Sunday was my 7th day, so like my bonus day. And so by Saturday, I had done my 1 square for the day in the morning and my 3rd row is complete. And I was like, you know, it's getting really close to the end of the month. I wonder if I can actually finish this blanket before the end of January. And so, you know, my brain starts doing math. I don't know if you're like this, but when I'm getting close to the end of the project, I'm like, how can I make this happen? So my brain starts doing math. So I'm like, okay, I have 6 more squares to do. It's Saturday. If I do 3 more squares today, and 3 squares on Sunday, I could get it finished by the weekend, and then I have the rest of the week to do the border. I could do 2 additional squares on Saturday, then 3 on Sunday, then 2, I guess that would be 2 more on Monday. Anyway, I was just doing all this math, and I just had so much fun putting these together, and I saw myself so close to the end that I ended up getting it all assembled this weekend. So all of my rows, all of that talk to say that all of the squares are now joined. I have to be careful. I have a candle in here now, so I can't be too crazy with my sharing, but all of the 24 squares are now joined, and having them all together makes every single part of it look better, doesn't it? Because when I first started, I think I started in a purple. Yeah, up here. When I first started, it was a lot of purple and green, which is fine. And then I started getting into all the oranges. And I feel like once I started adding blue, and especially this yellow square, it really just all came together and it looks so pretty. I'm so happy with this. This has been the most fun project. I've put a lot of time into this. So I started it for advent in December. I did 1 square per day, basically from December 1st to December 24th. Took a little bit of a break, and then in January I started assembling everything. Roughly 1 square assembled per day. It took me about an hour I would say, to assemble each square, and it probably took me 2 hours or more to make each square. So lots of time and love has gone into this project, but I've enjoyed every single minute of it. It's not quite done though, because now it's time to do the border. And I am thinking, where did I put my phone? Hold on. I want to show you what the border looks like. I should have pulled this up before, but I have the pattern here on my phone, so let me just grab it. There is a really beautiful border, and it's inspired, just like all these squares, it's inspired by Yorkshire. So this one says the sunset border is what it's called. It says the sunset shaped scallops of this border were inspired by watching the sunset from the Otley Cheven. I don't know if I'm saying that right. So it's really pretty. I'll show you a picture. It has little like puff stitches in it. Isn't that cool? It's really beautiful. And let me see if I can quickly get to the full picture of the blanket to show you what it looks like. Okay, kind of like that. It's really pretty. However, I don't think it really suits my colors. And I've thought this all along, like even from the get-go of starting this blanket, I really have been having a good time like playing with that. The stitches, like the stitch patterns and the blanket itself are very traditional looking, whereas my colors are neon bright rainbow. So I've had fun doing the squares that way. I really had fun like picking this border color. It was exactly what I imagined, something very warm, something more classic and traditional paired with something crazy. So it's like the neons and neutrals thing. This is obviously not my own concept, but something that I've seen in other patterns and clothes and things like that. And I just really like the way it looks together. So I really enjoyed that. So, but I feel like I've followed the pattern to a T up to this point, but this is where I think I'm going to change things. I'm just not sure the scallop border is right for this blanket. I want something a little more contemporary looking. So there's a good chance I've already done this by the time the podcast comes out in a couple of days, because I am hoping to start the border tonight. There is a plain row around that I'm going to follow from the pattern. And then from there, I think I am leaning towards one of two options. So the simplest of options, I think, well, the simplest of options would be to just do like single or double crochet and just keep it really simple. The option I'm leaning towards the most is doing a reverse single crochet or crab stitch. To me, this is kind of like the equivalent of doing an I-cord on a knitted blanket. I know you can do an I-cord, a crocheted I-cord, which looks very much like a knitted I-cord. And I could do that, honestly. That could be really cool, but I don't really feel like doing that. I think I'd rather do something almost like fully crochet. So maybe a crab stitch. And then the other option, I haven't seen what this looks like yet, but I was talking with some of my members on a Zoom this weekend, and one of them said they'd done a border on a blanket that almost looks like a rib. It's done with post stitches, so I need to test that out. So basically, I'm probably going to do the border to kind of get everything, all the stitches right, or the row that gets all the stitches right, and then I'm going to do a couple different borders kind of side by side and see which one that I like the best. So I'm excited to get into that process and hopefully have a finished blanket to show you next week. In case that first project was any indication, today's going to be a long episode. I have only one more whip to share, but so many other projects and things to talk about. So buckle up. Maybe get yourself a refill on your coffee or whatever you're drinking if you don't have it already. So the next project I have to talk about is my Beachcomber flares. I have made a ton of progress since last week. I actually remembered to put in a progress keeper. This is a little like Reese's cup. I don't remember who I got that from, but it's so cute. So I made a ton of progress and I am on my first leg. Actually, I think it's the right leg. So there we go. My first leg. And oh, wow. These look teeny tiny when I'm holding them up, but I have tried them on several times. And with pants, you do a lot of negative ease. So most of this has like 6 inches of negative ease. I think the hips are going to have about 8 inches of negative ease because I decided to follow the pattern instead of doing what I originally planned. So let's talk about that. Because where I was left off last week is I had abandoned my first go and restarted on a smaller needle. So I did a lot of math or I did a lot of measuring, I would say, not really a lot of math on this, because I really want these to be comfortable and to fit right. So these are flare pants. They are going to be so comfortable. I've made a pair of knitted shorts before. They came out way too big because I didn't do enough negative ease. So I'm like, this time I really want to get this right. So I took a lot of measurements on myself. I took a lot of measurements of a pair of flare leggings that I really like. And then I kind of compared my measurements and the measurements of the finished item that I liked with the measurements in the pattern. So my original plan was this. And the major thing that went wrong with this is that my gauge grew a lot from swatch to final item. So here was my swatch, and granted, it is not huge, so that kind of could have been a downfall for me. But from the swatch, I had 24 stitches and 4 inches, which is what I'm supposed to have. When I blocked this to do a try on, I had like 21 to 21 and a half and 4 inches. So it definitely grew. And it was also just looking kind of loose. Then you can also see, I don't know if you can tell, sorry, I haven't talked much yet today. You can also see that there's a lot of straight portion here. This one is not blocked yet. Like I said, I have tried it on a lot, but I haven't actually blocked it. And the increasing begins, hold on, can you see it? The increasing begins right after this waistband. This whole part is actually folds down. And this is according to pattern. Whereas with this, I try to go a little more towards the pants that I had originally tried on, which seemed to have a longer bit that went straight before I increased. So I did that on here and I realized I didn't really like it. It didn't really fit me right. Like this wasn't really staying up around my waist. I needed to start the increases earlier. So that's one thing I took from my first version into the second version, which just ended up being actually how the pattern is written. Go figure. So that was one thing that I did differently. So smaller needle size so I could actually get gauge, and then actually following the pattern and doing the increases where I'm supposed to. Speaking of, I realized that I had done the increases incorrectly on this one. I had reversed the make one right and make one left. And so I was able to fix that in the second iteration. So I'm, for so many reasons, glad that I decided to start this over. But that was a whole nother like validating reason I started it over, and now I get to fix things I didn't even realize I'd done wrong here. So the last thing that I did differently, again, you can see it's like kind of almost like a bell shape. I did some extra increases for my original version. So I did that based on my own measurements and on the finished item that I was measuring. So my waist to hip ratio is bigger than like a straight size. So in the pattern, I can't remember exactly the differences, but basically my waist measured a size 2 and my not as actual size 2, like a US size 2, a size 2 in the pattern. So my waist measured a size 2 in the pattern, my hips measured a size 3 in the pattern. And so I thought that's great, that's totally fine. I will make up the difference by starting with the size 2 at the waist, and then when I get to the hip increases, I will just add a few more increases to increase to the next size, and for the rest of the pants, I will follow that third size. This has worked really well for me in a lot of other situations. I did this when I made, same designer, I made a dress, so I was able to go from like the hip size that I needed to the bust size that I needed. Really great in a dress because whenever I have a one-piece sort of situation, it either fits me up top or fits me at the bottom, but never both. So that's really nice to be able to do. So I thought this would probably be the same. I've also done this a lot with sweaters and armholes. So I will basically go up another size in the armhole to make the armhole big enough for my arms. And the rest of the sweater, I follow like a smaller bust size. Anyway, this is a really great thing to customize your clothes, and it's not super difficult to do because you can basically just kind of jump from reading one part of the pattern to the next without having to do all your own math. So that's what I did in this one. But I was kind of thinking, you know, it's hard to tell because the gauge was already too big and the increases weren't really in the right place, but it still felt too big. So on this one, When I got to the point where I had done all the increases for size 2, my waist size, I tried it on to see if I needed to keep doing those extra increases to get up to the next size, and I realized that I really didn't need them. That would still made me really nervous, so as I continued down the straight part of the body of this, I continued to try it on and try it on and try it on, and still it's absolutely fine. So I think I should be good. And also this hasn't been blocked yet, so it's only going to get bigger with blocking and with wear. So even if it is a little snug now, which it's not, I don't want to make it any bigger. Okay, so to summarize, because that was a lot, I went down a needle size to accurately get the gauge. I did the hip increases according to pattern, and I stayed with one size according to pattern. So basically, I took all of the things that I thought I needed, all of the modifications, and I threw them out the window and I followed the pattern. I mean, go figure. This happens to me so often. It's comical. I do enjoy trying things, and sometimes making modifications does work for me. But more often than not, I feel like I end up going back to what the designer did because they obviously knew what they were talking about. So there you go. So let's talk a little bit more about yarn management, because that's one other thing that I did differently from the first version to the second version. So in my first one, I was helical knitting, which is just one row stripes where you do slip stitches to make the transition really, really smooth. And I was doing that basically from the top. And I decided, you know what, it's kind of tedious. I don't really want to do that. Instead, I will just work with one skein of yarn until I have a little bit left. And then I will do helical knitting for about 20 rows. So that would be alternating. So I got about 10 rows of the, skein that was running out, 10 rows of the skein that I'm incorporating in, and I've alternated them to make a smoother transition. So I was like, I'll do that instead. And that will just make the whole knitting process more enjoyable for me, because then I can take this project to the movies and different places and not have to pay as much attention to when I'm changing my yarn every single row. And that has really made it faster too. So I did do that. I think I joined in, I didn't have a full skein because I was going with what I had like left over after using 2 skeins alternating for this. I had about probably 50 or 60 grams of each skein left. So I worked through that whole like 60 gram skein until I had 10 grams remaining. So I wanted to see like how much yarn does it take to do a row? And it was just under 1 gram. So I was like, okay, if it's just under 1 gram, when I have 10 grams left, that will give me at least 10 rows to then alternate for like that 20 rounds of transition. So that's what I did. I had 10 grams left. I alternated. I did helical knitting. When my original skein ran out, I just started going around with that new skein and worked with that new skein. And then I got to the legs. So again, let's talk about, I feel like it's interesting to talk about like yarn management and stuff, because this is not something I would have thought of the first time that I did pants, but having just had more experience making different patterns, I want to do everything I can to make my pants look like they match. I know this doesn't matter for everybody. Most people probably don't care, but I do. So when I got to the leg, I decided, and this is also a good strategy for arms, I decided to take what I had left and split it in half. So rather than continue going on this leg with what was left from the body and just go round and round and round and then start a brand new skein over here, I took what was left and I split it in half. And so this is what I had. It was about 17 grams or so. So what's right here and what will be right here are coming from the same skein. So in theory, they should look the most similar out of all of my yarn. So hopefully that makes sense. And then I took my next skein and I split it in half to 2 50-gram balls. And when I had 5 grams left, because this only uses like half a gram per row, when I had 5 grams left, I started to alternate in that new 50-gram skein. So I have the 2 leftovers from the rise that are going to be the same. And then underneath that, these 2 are also from the same skein. And I plan to do that like all the way down, so hopefully the pants look the same. This is hand-dyed yarn. It is not perfectly uniform, and it's not supposed to be, and that's great. But I do want the pant legs to look similar. So I noticed that some of my skeins were a little pinker, so I didn't want it to be like a very pink leg and then a paler leg. I want them to be mostly similar all throughout. So hopefully that will work out and be very similar. So interesting. This was when I was doing helical knitting all the way around. You can see some pretty big splotches of yellow. It's very pretty. This is when I was just doing one skein and only alternating for a little bit. There is less yellow in it. It's almost more stripy. It's neither one is like better than the other. They're just different, which I think, and sorry, it's hard to hold them side by side to really show. I think it's because one of the skeins actually had more yellow in it than anything else. Anyway, they're just different. Sorry, it's really hard to show. And then now that I'm doing the leg, I am getting a little more like spiral pooling. See that? So I don't know if the other leg will do that, even if it comes from the same skein. It might not. And I have just started adding in that first 50-gram ball. So I have a really messy 5 grams left. And then I started adding this one in and I'm alternating. So hopefully once I get done incorporating this skein, alternating into it, my plan is to go ahead and pick up the second leg and then kind of work in tandem back and forth on the 2 legs. That way I can get a really good sense. Again, if it's still fitting, I'm continuously trying it on. Also, I don't want to get all the way to the end of one leg and still have an entire other leg to make. Okay, that was a lot on these 2 projects that I am working on. I am definitely not going to finish my pants by the end of February. I do have sort of like mid-February in mind to finish them. Maybe Valentine's Day. I don't know. That's the middle of the month. So I do want to get those finished. Those are my top priority. But as I'm about to share, I have lots of new things I want to cast on. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's podcast. We are going on 2 years since I moved nittynatty.com over to Squarespace because I just love how easy their platform is to use. I was able to create my website in just a few clicks and then tweak everything from there. You can even get started without any prior experience by using one of their many templates. I love that their editing screen is modular so I can easily customize how my pages look. This is so much easier to use than fussing with code. Squarespace has a range of options whether you're looking to sell physical products like yarn or stitch markers, or digital products like patterns or even memberships. And Squarespace makes it easier than ever to take payments. They have tons of popular options like Klarna, Direct Debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay. If you're a small business owner, it couldn't be easier to get your website started with Squarespace. Head to squarespace.com/nittynatty and use code nittynatty to get 10% off your first website or domain. Let's get into those February plans. What should we start with? I think maybe let's start with this because this is a project that has already been started and I want to finish it in February. This is my Battenberg blanket. Let me get this thing out and share a little bit about it. This is the Battenberg blanket by Sandra Paul. I have modified it for a 24 mini skein advent, and I've made the squares a little bigger. All of the details are on my project page. When I bring this back out and start working on it as a whip, I will share all those details again. It is yarn by Homespun House. This was the 2023 A Homespun House advent, and this was my 2023 project. So actually, no, that's not true at all. It might have been the 2022 because I actually worked on this in the summer. I'll get all the details clear again when I talk about this, when I'm actually working on it. But I have all of these wonderful squares that I have made, and I am in the process, aren't they so cute? I was able to get them back into the label. I am in the process of doing all of the neutral colored squares to then join the blanket. So I think I'm not quite halfway, but I am a good portion of the way into this blanket. It will also need a border, but joining is not as simple as just adding a border around it like I am doing with my Yorkshire blanket, but you're actually making a full square and then another round to join everything in. So it is a little bit time consuming, takes longer than even making the squares themselves. So I actually brought this project out a couple weekends ago when I needed something to work on and my other projects weren't in a place to do so. And I re-taught myself how to join these because I was like, okay, how do you do this? I watched the tutorial again, then like, how was I doing it? What were the little things that I was doing to make sure everything was consistent? Got that kind of figured out again. I had a square already made, and so I joined that in, and then I made up a new square using the same hook size and everything. And I realized that my tension has changed and this square came out bigger than the other squares. So I am going to have to do some work to figure out if going down a hook size is all I need to do, or if I actually have to like mess with how I'm tensioning the yarn. I hope that's not the case. I hope I can just go down a hook size, carry on, and complete this blanket, and it's simple as that. But that's going to be coming up next for me in, I guess, the next week or so as I make a plan to hopefully get this guy finished in February. I've got so many project plans coming up. Like I said, I was organizing yarn this past week. I'm doing even more organizing and kind of like the more in-depth like sorting and planning this week, which will become its own video. So I'm feeling really energized and excited about my projects. And for me, that always kind of starts with wrapping things up first, things that I love and want to finish before I get into doing anything brand new. So I have lots of blankets to wrap up, but then I have plans later in the year for like more blankets and more advents and all of that. Okay, next thing that I am planning to cast on is a skyline tee by Tori Yu. I don't know exactly when I'm going to start this, hopefully soon. I might actually just start it this week because there's kind of two purposes for me in this project. One, I want another t-shirt to wear because the two t-shirts I created last year, the twisted tee and the color tip tee, I wear a ton. They're very practical for me and I want another t-shirt, and I really liked this skyline tee. It has beautiful detail on the shoulder, a little bit of a longer sleeve. It's a little more like dressy looking, I think, than the other tees that I've created. So I want to add another t-shirt to my wardrobe. The second reason for me wanting to create this tee is this yarn. So Ruby and Roses, as you know, I'm a big fan of Ruby and Roses, my friends Addie and Devin. Addie has brought a new yarn base into her collection. It is called Rose Lace. It is 100% superwash BFL 2-ply lace, 875 yards. It has like this softness to it that, how do I explain this? Like, it's a non-superwash. It definitely feels non-superwash. I'm sorry, it's not a non-superwash. It says superwash BFL. To me, it feels like an in-between of superwash like merino and non-superwash yarns, where it doesn't feel like scratchy, but it also doesn't feel like silky. I think I'm explaining that horribly, but basically it feels really nice and lightweight and like it's going to be a really great t-shirt. So my plan is to hold two lace weight strands together to make a fingering weight for this pattern. I'd need to swatch it and everything first, of course, but I think that's going to be really beautiful. Now, this yarn is part of her new collection that is coming out on February 15th. It is a Downton Abbey collection, and this is just one of the colorways. This one is called Drama Queen. There's an assortment of solids and speckled yarns in the collection. And if you want to see all of the colors before the 15th, she's posting one per day on her Instagram right now. So you can follow her there and see all of the colors. She always takes a lot of really great like inspo photos. She shares a lot of great information. She usually has a swatch and all kinds of like different angles of the yarn. And so it's a lot better to see than just this, but hopefully I'll have this started soon because I do really want to work on this, but I'm hesitant to start another garment while I'm still working on the pants. So maybe I'll prioritize swatching this week and then get to that later. So the collection comes out on February 15th, but she already has something that's like associated with the collection. It's called the Aristocracy box. I think I'm saying that right. It's a collection of 10 20-gram minis plus a 100-gram skein, all on one of her fingering weight bases with a couple of extra goodies in there. So that's available now for pre-order. If you're a Downton Abbey fan or just a Ruby and Roses fan, definitely keep an eye out for these colorways. I'll try to keep you updated on Instagram as well when all of that stuff launches. Okay, next project. I am going to be teaching a brioche class to the Love and Stitches membership in February. So this kind of led to a bunch of different projects coming out of it for me. So here's how it started. First, and this is Ruby and Roses, not intentionally, but I do love Ruby and Roses yarn. I have one skein left from my Nordlig cardigan that I recently finished. I really like this color. It's called Rosy Cheeks. It's really beautiful. And I thought, maybe I'll make myself a hat. It's always fun to have another hat in my collection, something a little bit different to wear. I thought I might make the Manhattan hat by Tori Yu, the designer of the Skyline Tee. Skyline Tee. I think there is a Skyline pullover. Anyway, I thought that would be great. It'd be a quick project to make, something that I can use up this yarn and enjoy it even more. Then we figured out what pattern we wanted to make for the Love and Stitches membership. And the pattern we're going to make is called Brioche Loop. It is by Tanya Steinbeck, and you need 2 contrasting colors for brioche. And so I was at my local yarn store, Bliss Yarns, and they have a lot of Ruby and Roses yarn. So they had a new shipment of fingering weight Ruby and Roses yarn, and they have this color. This is the DK non-superwash, but where did it go? They have the same color in her, what base is this? Let me see. This is the Plump Rose, 85 superwash merino, 15% nylon, and it's a 2-ply. So I was like, well, I really like these colors, right? And I need to have 2 colors for the brioche loop. So what if I make one of them this same color so I can have a hat that matches the cowl that we're gonna make? So that's how I ended up with these 2 colors together, which I think are gonna make the prettiest brioche. So I'm really excited. So this is for the brioche loop. This is what I'm definitely casting on this next weekend, because we're having our class and we're going to be working on brioche for February and March. So I will be working on that. So then I'm like, okay, now I have a hat that I'm just going to do in this pink. I have a cowl that I'm going to do in 2 colors. Now I think I need gloves in this color to kind of tie it all together. So I ended up getting a second skein of this. This is Material Girl, and I got all of these from Bliss Yarns. I got this one directly from Ruby and Roses and these from Bliss Yarns. But now I'm going to have this whole collection because my set that I made last year, it's all alpaca yarn. It's a hat. I did the Musselburgh hat. I did a traveler's loop, and then I bought finished gloves, machine-made gloves, all from the same vendor, I think it's American-made alpaca. And I wear the set like all the time. I love that it's a set. I love that it matches, but it's a very neutral set and it's also very warm. So I'm like, okay, this would be a very fun set for when I'm feeling fun, and it's also lighter weight. The brioche loop is fingering weight, and it's only one single loop. This would all be like a lot lighter weight. So I just went a little wild. So basically, this one skein inspired me to carry it on with the project that we're doing in the membership to then make gloves eventually. I don't know when all this is going to happen, but the brioche loop is February, and it's also perfect for Valentine's Day. Okay, that's not it. I have one more thing that I'm going to be doing in February, and actually, this is probably the biggest commitment of all. I haven't really sorted out how I'm going to do all of these projects that I just mentioned, so don't hold me to it. It's just the brainstorming phase for me right now. But this is something that I have had planned since maybe November when I purchased this, and that is I am planning to spin every day in February because I purchased a 28-day countdown, It is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days themed from the Little Wolf Knits, and it is a fiber countdown. My very first fiber countdown, and I'm super excited. I have no idea how long it's going to take me to spin the amount of fiber that is in the packages every single day. I do know that it's a combo spin, so there's different fibers every single day. I'm sure they repeat. I'm sure there's not 28 different ones, but they alternate. I don't really know much about like how I'm going to spin the colors together, what I'm going to do. So this is all very new for me, but it's a stretch for me, right? Like a stretch goal to spin every single day and to have something all spun up by the end of February, then to ply it and actually finish and make some yarn. The first spinning project that I am doing is still on the bobbins. I have not finished plying it for no good reason other than I just have kind of lost interest because it's plying and I'm kind of like, whatever. But I need to finish plying this week so that I can clear all my bobbins and get ready to start on Saturday my daily spinning. So if you ordered this countdown, you could have gotten the fiber version or the yarn version. And actually, as I'm recording this, I think there are still 2 of the yarn countdowns available if you want to get something to open up in February. So you can't really see anything in here except for the extras, which I think I'll open up right now with you if you want to. So if you have either one of these countdowns, yarn or fiber, they might be the same extras. So if you don't want to know, skip ahead to the next segment. So we have a candle. It is called Chocolate Hearts. I'm actually burning a Little Wolf Knits candle right now. It's called Continental Breakfast and it smells really good. Oh my, that smells like chocolate. I don't know why I'm surprised. It smells so good. I now have this and I also have my Woolen Women candle for February. So maybe I'll put this one downstairs February 1st and I'm already planning to put the other one up on my desk because I like lighting a candle every day when I start work. It's just so nice. We've got some Stash Chocolate Mint Tea. I do really like that one. I will go use that probably tonight. And then what's this? Oh, there's a soap. Goat milk soap. Oh, this is actually great. I really needed some goat milk soap. Goat milk soap from Parker's Old Time Farm in something, New York. And on the back, the scent says Pure and Simple, which makes me think it might be no scent at all, like unscented without any essential oils or anything. Perfect timing because I have been wanting to try using goat milk soap. I have goat milk face wash that I've tried, but I want to try goat milk soap in the shower to see if it helps with some of my like eczema and problems. So perfect timing because I just ran out of body wash. More than you needed to know. Okay, everything else in here is fiber. And there is so much of it. Holy cow, this is only half. And here is the rest. Again, you can't really see much from the packaging. I do think I am just going to fully indulge in this countdown and I am going to unpack this. And I have worked so hard to get this room like clean and tidy over the last several weeks. It is such an oasis of a space now. And I have a buffet that I can put lay out 28 skeins of fiber. Do you call them skeins of fiber? So I think I'm just going to fully indulge in this and really make daily spinning something that's just like a ritual for me. I also have, you can't really see it, but I got this really cool table that kind of opens up. I've been using it to sit here in this chair and Zoom. It's been really wonderful. So I think I can spin on the table. Might be a little high. But anyway, that's more than you need to know. I'm just so excited for all of these projects coming up. And sorry for the abrupt disruption, but my camera overheated. I've been recording for so long and I'm way too excited and it just got too hot. So I don't even know what I was saying. I think I was wrapping up talking about February project plans. Basically, I'm just really excited for everything that I'm going to be starting, everything that I'm going to be working on for this month. I have too much on my plate right now. Like I have too many ideas. It's not all going to happen. So over the next week, the last week of January, I'm going to be narrowing that down to a more realistic expectation. Okay, let's fly through some Yarny news because I've already talked way too long for this podcast. So first, a new yarn store tour video is going to be coming out this Saturday. We are traveling to South Carolina to Copious Fibers. This is a lovely yarn store run by a mother and daughter team. You're going to really enjoy getting to know them and their story. That will be on Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, where it will premiere if you want to watch it live, but then it will be up on the channel just like all of my other videos. This is our second to last yarn store tour. Our final one is the week after that, and then that's all 50 states. So we're getting to the end. I don't know. It's really exciting that that project is almost complete. I did get a little more yarn. Forgive me, I have to share a little more yarn with you this week. I got my November and December Blanket of Knowledge skeins from Hot Springs Fiber Co. So this is a subscription that is either sport weight or DK weight yarn. It's intended for a blanket. You get either a knit or I think you get either the knit or crochet pattern. I get both in mine. Maybe everyone gets both. I can't quite remember, but it's a full skein of yarn plus a little mini skein for your joining, whether you're doing strips and it goes in between or squares and it connects. This is a project I have to get back to because I started it as strips. I wasn't really enjoying that. Then I did it as squares, which I did like, but then I had so many other projects going on. This is not high on the priority list right now with the other blankets I want to complete, but I am planning to come back to this eventually. So I'll link to Blanket of Knowledge down below if that is something you might be interested in. Okay, next up, the Sock Week 2025 application is going to open on February 7th. It is a Friday. I think it's a week from this Friday. So a week from tomorrow if you're watching this when it comes out. So it will be open for 2 weeks. If you are a yarn dyer, bag maker, stitch marker maker, other kind of accessory maker, you can apply to be a sponsor of Sock Week. The details for what that is going to be will be in the application, but you'll want to have a rough idea of the product that you're going to want to make or the theme or the colors or things like that. You don't have to have it finalized, but just an idea. Our theme for Sock Week this year is finalized. I'm going to be sharing that on February 7th when the application goes live, but it is one of the 3 themes that everyone voted on. You probably already know what it is. So I'm really excited to share all of that. The logo that I'm having designed is adorable. I can't wait to share that with you too. So exciting stuff. That's all coming up in just a couple of weeks. Last thing here, I want to share the February events that are coming up. So you can find these and the links specifically to these events on nittynatty.com, nittynatty.com/yarny-events, or you can just pull it from the drop-down menu resources. There are 2 events I have on my website, but if there's more, please send them to me and I will get them added. So the first one is Scenic Stitches. It is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, February 1st and 2nd. Again, if you go to nittynatty.com, the link to that website is on there. The second one is Carolina Alpaca Celebration and Parade. That is in Concord, North Carolina, February 8th and 9th. I have a couple of highlights to round out this podcast. The first one, I want to share a book that I read over this past week because it was just too cute. I couldn't not share it. So it is called My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. Did I get that totally right? Yeah, My Roommate is a Vampire. It is a rom-com. I guess it's like a romance, but it's really cute and it's different, I feel like, from a lot of romances that I've read in the past. I thoroughly enjoyed it all the way through. I enjoyed it so much that even though I had already downloaded the last 3 books of the Throne of Glass series, which I have been reading for like the past several months, I read this book first. Like I finished this book first before starting the books that I have been wanting to read and waiting to get from the library. Like that's how much I enjoyed it. So I highly recommend it. It's a very cute, short book, easy read, very fun romance, but with some nice, like, other elements to it. Vampires, I mean, pretty cool. Set in Chicago, that's all I'll tell you. It's really good. And there's a second book in the series that's out, so I'm planning to try to get that one next so I can read it. February would be a good time to read a romance, so maybe I'll try to get it in February and read it. Okay, Organizing my yarn this week is definitely a major highlight. It feels so, so good to finally be starting to manage all of the chaos. The last year has just been really wild. I have honestly indulged in a lot of yarn buying. I've received a lot of yarn as gifts, yarn to share as an affiliate. I have just so much stuff, and it was making me feel really guilty and also kind of ashamed for how I wasn't giving it the love that it deserved, honestly. So this past week, I got it all sorted and organized into categories, into tubs. It's not put on shelves yet. I don't have that space cleared, but it's all organized. So I made a video called The Big Sort. It is everything like figured out and sorted and all of that. It has no relation to a movie of a similar title. Kent was like, did you mean for that to be related? No. In my head, I was just always calling sorting things out a big sort. So it just kind of made sense for me. But anyway, they're all sorted and organized. And then this week, I'm taking a little bit of time, 30 minutes to an hour each day, to grab one of those tubs and go through it a little bit more. So I just sorted everything out last week. This week, I'm actually taking things one category at a time and going, okay, what am I going to use myself? What am I going to donate or give away to and share with other people? Like what's staying in my stash and what's going, and how am I going to deal with that? So I'm doing that just one category at a time, one little bit each day, and that will be, I think, next week's video. Haven't quite decided yet, but yeah, just going through all of that stuff and trying to get it back to a manageable amount for me. And it's feeling so good. And it's led to all this inspiration and bringing out old projects and getting excited to do new projects. And yeah, it just feels really nice. Last thing here, this weekend I got to meet up with some of my Love and Stitches members who live in the Nashville area. We met for a few hours and knit together, crocheted. I was crocheting. And it was just really wonderful. I love meeting up with people in person. We did a lot of that this last year, but getting to meet up with like a small group in person, especially a group of people that I can get together with again because we're in Nashville for a while, there's just something different to that that is really, really nice. It's very grounding. I think for me, I'm feeling really grateful to feel grounded. I think that's kind of the theme of everything that's been happening in the last week that's made me feel really excited and happy is, getting to organize my things, getting to appreciate them, getting to see people in person that I will see again and not just be like meeting really quickly and then going on to the next state. That's been exciting and really fun. So I've been very grateful for that. Okay, that's everything for this super long episode. Thanks for sticking around and staying until the end. If you haven't already, I encourage you to check out the tour that we did at Chelsea Yarns. It is a yarn dyeing studio in Red Bank, New Jersey. Christina the dyer and Tad, her husband, are super funny. We also have a little feature from their dog Gretzky. I will leave that video here on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!